Alright, so I know I've been like 3 years late to this party, but this is actually something I've always wanted to cover on this channel. So you guys might not know this about me, but I am a huge Assassin's Creed fan. Like, I've been playing these games for like the last 4 or 5 months, trying to get through them in chronological order, and I'm actually such a big fan that once I got a Nintendo Switch Lite for my birthday, the first game I got was the Assassin's Creed Rogue Collection, which is basically Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag and Assassin's Creed Rogue combined together in one little package. You best believe I copped that immediately. Are you kidding me? $30 for both those games on Switch? Bargain. I've been grinding out the Assassin's Creed games in chronological-ish order ever since where I left off in Assassin's Creed 3 all the way to Assassin's Creed Valhalla. And right now, I'm proud to announce that I have just finished Assassin's Creed Origins. So the reason I wanted to specifically research Assassin's Creed Origins and Odyssey before starting them was because I had heard some very, very different accounts from fans and from critics. And let me tell you, it's like a real Rotten Tomatoes situation here where the critics seem to love it, but the fans seem to hate it. Usually what that tells you is that fans are purists in that they want the canon and lore and mechanics of the thing that they like to not be changed too much. But critics side, you get people who want some kind of change and evolution and progress, who might not really care about the spirit of the game or anything along those lines. But I fall somewhere in between, I feel, because, you know, on one hand, I like to talk about stuff I like on the internet, so I guess that technically makes me a reviewer. But on this hand, I'm also kind of a fan purist person. So I actually watched this video by IGN reviewing Assassin's Creed Origins before I even started the game. Let me tell you, I was surprised that IGN gave it a 9 out of 10, which isn't really a spoiler for this review. I haven't watched this video since the month or so that I've started this whole thing, so I kind of want to go back in and see what this is all about.
Assassin's Creed Origins is a story full of secrets worthy of Egypt's last royal protector, Bayek of Siwa. It's also the series' first full-on role-playing game, and mixes a delightful sense of discovery with an addictive leveling system.
That is actually true. So the leveling system can be your worst enemy or your best friend, because on one hand, facing an enemy even 2 levels above you is an exercise in madness. Like, you'll go crazy trying to do it. The way that the game is kind of framed is that you're not progressing sequentially with the story. The way they want you to do it is to do the side missions alongside the main missions to gain XP so that you match the basic, like, minimum requirements to do the following main story mission. It's a little hit and miss sometimes. It can get tedious, especially around past level 25-ish, where you have to do like 3 or 4 or 5 side missions to get the same amount of XP that you needed to get from like levels 1 through 10. But otherwise, once you have those XP acquired, it's pretty fun.
I spent 30 hours finishing the main campaign, which took me just over half of the expansive and beautiful map. It's the biggest and most connected ever.
Funny enough, it took me almost exactly 30 hours to finish the game as well.
The exploration is made even more impressive by the lack of loading screens, with the exception of some story cutscenes and if you choose to fast travel. While the main story is delightfully
Exploration is really fun. Some places are more cared for than others, and it really shows. So you'll have these beautifully constructed palaces and real showcases of ancient Egyptian design, and then you'll have like sand for like miles. Just sand everywhere.
On its own, Origins also has the strongest mission design in any Assassin's Creed game to back it up. From collecting clues to solve mysteries, to gladiatorial arena fighting, to Black Flag-style ship-to-ship combat, each series of missions...
Okay, hot take, I actually enjoyed their ship-to-ship combat in Origins a little bit more than I did Black Flag, because Black Flag ship combat, while fun, I guess, was so tedious. It took up like 40% of the game. It drove me crazy. It drove me so crazy. But in Odyssey, it was so fun. It was genuinely fun. I didn't dread it. I didn't run from it. Okay, wow, I was about to quote Thanos there. Investigations were meh for me. I try to skip them as fast as possible, and I'm kind of not a grinder, but I really don't think that investigations are a really good aspect unless it's like a Batman or Sherlock Holmes or like detective game at its core. That's kind of where I push back a little bit.
It feels like a self-contained story with its own custom-built gameplay. Another highlight of the series is hidden temples, which, without spoiling anything, tie into Assassin's Creed's overarching sci-fi story in interesting ways.
Barely. like super barely. Like however barely you're thinking is even more barely. Like it's almost insignificant, dude. This is an RPG game. This is an ancient Egyptian RPG game. Like, first and foremost, it's barely an Assassin's Creed game, but that's okay. That's okay. That's fine.
Of course, this being an Assassin's Creed game, there's a whole lot of parkour and climbing in Origins, and it's more seamless than ever. The act of climbing feels almost as passive as...
Okay, let's not go too crazy now. It's not. Unity and Syndicate were the pinnacle of the parkour and movements in any Assassin's Creed game. This is a downgrade. Like, don't let IGN fool you. The only reason it might feel seamless is because it's basically curated for you. It's kind of like one straight line where you just kind of have to hold X to get through. You barely have any control. You can't time your jumps or anything along those lines. It's very linear. It just kind of masks its linearity with statics. It's a mind trick is what I'm trying to say. It's good, but it's not anywhere near Origins. Not anywhere near Unity or Syndicate.
Running, and while that does remove some of the challenge that existed in previous games, it takes a fair amount of frustration out the door with it. There's definitely a renewed challenge in the combat though, which has been significantly rebuilt.
Yes.
Having to know when to block, when to dodge, and when to parry creates a whole lot more thoughtful tension than has existed.
Yes, dude, the combat system in this game is so much more fun. I loved it. It was a little agonizing at first because I didn't know like exactly what to do and I wasn't used to the controls, but it's so fun. Like breaking enemy defense, holding your defense, transitioning between arrow, spear, sword, whatever have you. There's different weapons that have different properties. I personally had this fire arrow that I loved, that I never let go of from beginning to end, and I had this poison arrow that I got like halfway through the game, and I upgraded both of them because you could upgrade your weapons. You could upgrade whatever weapon you have, the type of weapon you have. You could even upgrade the damage it does to a certain point. And the mechanics of it are so fun because there are different enemies that counter differently. There are different enemies that use different weapons. There are different enemies that have different defenses, different XPs. Like, it's a whole thing, and it's so fun. Unless you're fighting some guy who's 10 levels above you, this is like so balanced. I really, really love what they did with the combat here.
In previous games, and there's a fair amount of enemy variety. You also have the ability to lock on to one specific target at a time, which only made stealth segments more precise, but swapping between targets unfortunately didn't work reliably while brawling.
I literally never used the lock-on thing. I just eyeballed it. It was way easier. Don't use the lock-on thing. It's totally useless.
In a larger group. Then there are weapons, which vary in type, rarity, and effect as part of a proper loot system. Once I'd picked them up and learned their uses, I always kept 3 different bow types handy to swap between, and having those kinds of choices always helped with boss fights and tougher enemies. It's a constant decision-making process, and the combat is much richer.
This guy drove me bananas. His XP would just not run out. I wasn't even at a lower level. He was just really tough to beat. And the worst part was that he was one of those enemies where like one hit took like 90% of your health. So I had to like keep dodging this dude, scale up a building, and wait for like one of my bars to heal. Like I had to long range this dude so hard. I had to be really strategic about it, which might have been the point of the game, but I still ended up beating him. It was really fun. I got it down. I love that aspect about this game, dude. You basically have to make up your own strategy to win if you're not quite OP enough to just button mash him to death. And I'm not really a button masher. I loved that I had the option to do it either way.
For it.
Ugh, first person arrows. Ugh.
While unlocking new abilities and story missions generally happens at a smooth pace, there is quite a lot of grinding to be done.
There is.
That said, one of my favorite things to do is infiltrate high-level fortresses. For me, the biggest appeal of Origins' introduction of the level system is in that optional self-induced challenge.
Yep. The self-induced challenges really make this game, dude.
On the other hand, finding a legendary weapon...
Because you're incentivized to do them. Little disclaimer, I bought one of those like epic versions of the game for like $30 when it was on sale. So I had a lot of the special items or whatever unlocked at like purchase. So I totally, and also you don't need the microtransactions, so I just avoided them outright. The only thing that you might actually need them for, and again, I hesitate to even use the word need, is the materials to like upgrade your armor. weapons. Not weapons as in like your sword and shield, but weapons like your hidden blade, your quiver, your arrow capacity, your melee attacks, stuff like that.
Assassin's Creed Origins is a deep dive into a truly stunning realization of ancient Egypt, with a rich series of cultures, genuine characters, and more mission variety than any other game in the series. The combat is challenging and thoughtful, and there are enough different weapon types and enough enemy variety to keep you thinking.
Yeah, so I want to go back to this 9 out of 10 thing real quick. I don't disagree with it on the basis of a really good RPG game, because you really do feel like Bayek and Aya, and you really get immersed into the story. And by the end of it, trust me, spoiler alert, you're really gonna hate Cleopatra. But I think where the Assassin's Creed fan in me kind of gets that anger of, this is not the Assassin's Creed I knew. You'll notice that she didn't talk about that there's no eagle vision. The eagle vision that they have in Origins is literally you having this telepathic connection to an eagle named Senu. And sure, that's neat and all, but it can't help you like see through walls or, you know, mark your enemies, stuff like that. Stuff that sure you can consider to be game breaking or anything like that, because it might make the game too easy, which is basically the antithesis of any RPG game. I would argue is kind of where the heart of an Assassin's Creed game is. That being said, the fan in me would give it like a 6 or 7 out of 10 for the Assassin's Creediness, but the general gamer / objective reviewer in me would give it an 8 or a 9. So I'd kind of balance it out to like a 7.8 to light 8 out of 10. I might go back and review the other Assassin's Creed games that I finished right before this, because it wasn't that long ago. Like, I just grinded Syndicate and Unity, or I started Origins, so that might be fun. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more, please give me a like. It helps me out a lot with the YouTube algorithm. Leave a comment, subscribe with notifications on. Thanks for watching. Sayonara.